Crazy people don't know they're crazy, right? You've all heard this before, probably. It's one of those age-old phrases that people throw around because it's funny and cute. But it makes me wonder, is it true? Can a crazy person know that they're crazy? And if they know they're crazy, can they stop being crazy? Does the knowledge of it mean that they're not crazy? Surely, if it's true that crazy people don't know they're crazy, then knowing you're crazy means you're not actually. And maybe that's why mental illness is still so stigmatized, because you're not supposed to talk about your own mental illness, your own outlying personality, because if you actually had it, you wouldn't know. Because crazy people don't know they're crazy. And I'm not going to tell people not to say this, but I want you to think about what it actually means. Think about the words. There's a lot of people that are trying to end the R word, retard, because they correlate retard with people with autism, Down syndrome, and so on. So if you say casually, oh, that was retarded, in a totally different context, no doubt you'll get a lot of sharky looks, and you'll be told, don't say that word. But those same people oftentimes will say, well, that was crazy. Isn't that crazy? Look at that girl talking to herself. She's crazy. That guy that has to walk in circles 13 times before he can walk outside his front door. He's crazy. That guy that's yelling at all the kids on his lawn. He's crazy. That's so crazy, isn't it? Because crazy people don't know they're crazy. It's totally okay to stigmatize being crazy, but don't you dare say the R word. I think the word crazy is a lot more accusatory than the word retard. I mean, they're both kind of said derogatorily towards people with mental illness or like different behaviors, but one of them is socially acceptable to say and one of them isn't. Again, I'm not telling you what not to say. I say things are retarded all the time. I say things are crazy all the time, but I also understand what it's like to be called crazy or a retard. Do crazy people know they're crazy? Does a schizophrenic know she's a schizophrenic? Does your autistic child understand what it means to be autistic and why that makes them different from normal people? And furthermore, can you call yourself something like autistic without a formal diagnosis from a doctor? My answer to that is yes. Crazy people can know that they're crazy. Do all of them? I don't know. I can't dive into the brains of everybody, but I reckon that a good majority of people who have different personalities have spent their entire lives being told they're different and treated like they're different. So yeah, they probably know that they are what a layman would say is crazy. Whether or not they have a true formal diagnosis for some illness or whatever, I myself do not have a formal diagnosis. I am a 33-year-old adult female. I went my entire life undiagnosed, and to be diagnosed formally, I would have to put down thousands of dollars for multiple doctors, because here's the truth of it. Doctors are not infallible. Most parents can probably attest to this, that it probably took multiple doctors, multiple therapists to come to a diagnosis for their child who is in fact autistic or has Asperger's or any number of mental illness. In fact, a lot of girls are either completely left undiagnosed or they are wrongfully diagnosed with, say, schizophrenia. Somehow that seems to be the go-to diagnosis for females with autism. Why is that? Well, girls are just crazy. All women are crazy, right? Well, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe this demand for women to be submissive over decades and decades just masked the fact that some of us are autistic. And no one's ever had a reason to question that in girls because we're supposed to be shy. We're supposed to be submissive. We're supposed to be neat and tidy. We're supposed to be crazy. But it's here. We have it. I have it. And I learned this about myself 3 years ago when I was 30. And I still have family members who outright deny the possibility of it. And I am still told that unless I have a doctor's note, then I can't talk about it. Even though I know with like my very being, and everything I've read about it, and everything I've studied about it since I learned this about myself. There's a page on Facebook that I've been following, the autism discussion page, and everything this page describes with like Asperger's, I'm like, that's me. I never knew that there was a word for the way I am, the reason for the behavior I've always had. It was always there. I just didn't know what it was called. Years ago, I named my brain Cheryl. So when I became aware that I was acting a certain way that was unacceptable to the normal folks, I said, Cheryl's taking control. If I went into a mood swing, Cheryl's in control. And then the word triggered became popular, so I guess it's easier to say that Cheryl is triggered. When I have week-long panic attacks, Cheryl's in control. I'm basically Cheryl's robot. I don't necessarily see myself as an actual person, like an individual. I don't see my face probably the way most people see me. That is until I started wearing goth makeup. I was never into girly pink shades of blush makeup, but I've always been fascinated by people who just go completely for it into the goth makeup. And for some reason, I always felt like I needed permission to do it. You know, I started having to become an adult and get jobs and be responsible, and I was always like, how do people do it? How do adults get through their lives as goths wearing makeup? And then I learned from a few YouTubers, primarily Black Friday, that you don't need permission. You just do it. And, you know, just like for normal people, you have your everyday clothes and then you have your work uniform. Having to wear your work uniform doesn't make you less of a goth or less of a punk or less of whatever. You do what you have to do to get by, to survive, and you don't always have to look like this. It's not about what you look like. So I finally gained the, I guess, courage to just go for it. This year, well, I think I started doing this in like November or December, but on the 1st of this year, I decided, through the inspiration of another YouTuber called Aurelio Voltaire, who was a fantastic musician, that you just do it. So on the 1st of this year, I decided that I'm no longer going to seek permission. I'm just gonna do it. And Cheryl, I know you're in there. Hopefully this is a common ground we can find, and you know, now I can see myself. I can look at myself and say, that's me. You know, I can look at a picture of me now, and I don't lose myself, because I do that. In group pictures, I can't find myself a lot of times, because I am autistic. And a common thing with autistic people is we are face blind, and we are kind of disassociated from ourselves. We see ourselves from like a third person. If I see myself in a picture, it takes me a minute. So, isn't that crazy? So, this is supposed to be kind of an introductory video for this channel. So, I'm going to be going into depth about what it's like to be an adult on the spectrum, what it's like to have been a child that was never diagnosed and treated like I was a horrible person for not paying attention and all this stuff. I'll go into the code disorders like depression and anxiety and stuff. And mainly I want to go into the correlation I'm finding between autism and the Gothic subculture. Because the more I read about both, the more I find that there's a lot of us out there that kind of seek out the goth subculture, and there might be logical or just emotional reasons for that. So it would be interesting to study this further and kind of document my journey through it from now on. Because before now, it was kind of something I couldn't talk about because crazy people don't know they're crazy and we're not allowed to talk about it because that negates it or something. But now I'm just gonna do it. That's my thing for this year, is do the thing. Just do the thing. I'm not gonna be Shia LaBeouf and just scream it out loud, but that kind of inspires me when I'm like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Just do the thing. Whatever that thing is, if it's some kind of creative endeavor that you've been toying with and you're not sure, maybe you'll fail, but maybe. But you learned something from it. You tried. So this is kind of scattered, but that's kind of what we do. If you have any questions about it, either thing, it can be autism, it can be goth questions, a little bit of both. I want this to be a blend of the two because I think maybe there is a correlation there. Hopefully you were able to follow this to some degree. I apologize. Even if I try to script things out, I never follow it. It's just my attention span is almost non-existent sometimes. So I'll catch you again later.